Inside the Fox 59 CBS 4 podcast studio, welcome to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast. I'm Dave Griffiths, joined by Matt Adams across from me. We're giving the venerable Mike Chappell a little bit of time off before the Colts gather together in Westfield again at training camp, getting prepared for a new season. We do have a little bit of training camp news, Matt, that we'll get to shortly.
Absolutely. Finally, some dates and such we'll go through.
Yep. Dates, details, themes, and all that the Colts just released right before we hopped on here.
Yep.
Yeah, like
Thanks,
breaking news here on the Colts Blue Zone Podcast. Had to sit down and do a podcast about the Colts specialty days for training camp in at Grand Park. But we'll talk plenty about the horseshoes. Looking forward to this season. We're doing players with a lot to gain, a lot to lose. You're looking down the roster, there's going to be 53 guys on the final roster, and we easily came up with 10 guys who have a lot.
The same thing too. I'm like quite
in both ways. Like we kept going down. It was like, oh, okay, these guys, they could have swings in their season.
It's like a fifth of the roster. It's
exactly.
A make or break for
there is a consensus number one to this list. We will put it that way, and I'm sure you all who are out there know exactly who it is.
Shouldn't be hard to figure
exactly. But we've got that. We'll talk about a few more things that highlight this past week in NFL football. But we will start with news around the league, and it kind of begins right now with the Aaron Rodgers Farewell Tour. Aaron taking a spot on the Pat McAfee show, as is his tradition over the past couple years, but doing that again this year, it seems. He signed with the Steelers and told McAfee that this is his last contract. So promise, or maybe he had his fingers crossed behind his back.
We'll believe it when the papers are turned in and signed.
Exactly. Very much in line of the man he followed in the NFL, Brett Favre. I will believe it when I see it. But Rodgers says this is his last contract. He's played 18 seasons with the Packers. This will be his 21st NFL season, which is a gargantuan number.
Amazing.
It speaks to his longevity. It speaks to his skill over time. It speaks to how he kept his skill over time. And very much like Tom Brady in the fact that he hit his late 30s and early 40s, and he's still going pretty strong. Now, he didn't have his best year last year. I won't argue that, but he wasn't terrible. I think that the team was worse than he was last year.
I don't think he anticipated that the Jets were going to be quite as needy and bad as they were last year.
But Aaron Rodgers has been in the NFL since 2005, for crying out loud,
yeah.
which to me is like 2005 was like yesterday, wasn't it? No.
That's
what happens when we turn 40 years old, Matt. That you think that 20 years ago was like, oh, it's just a couple years ago.
I was just 2 years out of college by then. Fox for 2 years by then. So.
Exactly, but nope. He was drafted, of course, out of Cal, and before that, Butte Community College, out in California. He'll be 42 years old in December of this year. But Aaron Rodgers, he certainly will go down as a controversial figure. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, I think so.
Because of some of the views he espoused, but also we in the media and we as fans like people to be honest and authentic. And if there's one thing that Aaron Rodgers is, I think it's authentic. Like what you see from him is very much who he is. He's not trying to hide who he is. You can debate whether or not you like who he is, Matt, but he's presented himself as himself in the public eye very consistently. And on the football field, he was one of the best quarterbacks of his generation.
Yeah, and it's kind of one of those things where the reason that, people don't want to hear his opinions is because they don't necessarily agree with his opinions. It's like, you can be as honest as you want as long as I agree with you. And that's kind of the way that we have progressed as a society. Definitely a colorful figure, a guy that, you felt bad for him on draft night. I still remember draft night. They just kept going because he was supposed to go high. And it was just like they kept passing on him. And then, when he did get drafted, he sat behind Favre for a couple of years. And, then he got his chance. And when he got his chance, he was really good. And again, probably not one of my personal favorite players of all time, but like goodness, I respect what he put out on the field for all those years in Green Bay, especially.
One of the best arms in NFL history,
yes.
Arm talent when it just comes to that. And he could, in his prime, he could move around in the pocket better than anyone that I've ever seen. I think just a little here and there moving around. Like Jacoby Brissett did that really well for the Colts. I think that was one of his biggest strengths that Colts fans remember watching him for a couple years here in Indy. That he could like dive up dip, dive, and dodge around in the pocket, so to speak. And Aaron was just exceptional at that, being able to work around a little bit and then fling it out to Jordy Nelson or fling it to Randall Cobb or whoever it might have been.
Just a long list of wide receivers that he made better.
Yeah, for sure. And the Packers, of course, famously don't draft wide receivers in the first round, except for Javon Walker years ago, and then now just this past year, Matthew Golden. It was a long stretch that they made guys, and then of course Devontae Adams grew into what he was, is probably the best wide receiver in the NFL for a couple years there during his peak with Rodgers. But Rodgers with Pittsburgh, I think, will be interesting because they've got an incredibly talented receiver there, or a couple receivers there, DK Metcalf, of course, and Pittsburgh is always around at playoff time, and the worst teams in the NFL would love to be Pittsburgh and be challenging playoff time. Pittsburgh fans don't want to be that because they want to be competing for championships. Right. So it's a unique position in that way that they're hoping that Rodgers can help them take the next step and be a competitor in the AFC this year.
Still a franchise like many in the NFL. We're just a quarterback away, right?
Yep.
And so now we tried the Russell Wilson thing. Yep. So now we're going to go and try the Aaron Rodgers thing.
And we will see how that works. Travis Hunter has signed with the Jacksonville Jaguars, a 4-year deal. Of course, the 5th-year option is a first-round pick, a team option that has specific rules about how much money that becomes in the 5th year. It has to do with the value of franchise contracts at the time, franchise tags, rather, I believe, at the time. A fully guaranteed deal for Travis Hunter. It's worth $46.65 million, a $30.57 million signing bonus, which is a record for a non-quarterback who was not drafted number 1.
Yeah, some caveats
overall.
to that, but still very impressive.
It is. Yeah, I was kept reading them. I was like, how many caveats do we have here on the list? But still, that's a large number for a player who is expected to do big things in Jacksonville, and Colts fans are going to get a front row seat.
We've seen him twice
at this show, and I believe it is going to be a show. I don't know where he will make his biggest money in the NFL yet, Matt, whether it's on the defensive or the offensive side of the ball. Like, I'm leaning toward defense just because that's what I read from the people I respect, and that's what I've seen from the people who follow the NFL like even more in depth than we do. And but you look at him, and there's no doubt that he could be an impact player on the offensive side of the ball too. And Jacksonville is not in a position where I think that they can dictate too many terms. They're not a franchise that has earned that right. You know what I mean? I think that Travis Hunter has earned that right to be able to dictate some things about how he's going to be used right now because he's a Heisman Trophy winner. He seems to be a once-in-a-generation type talent. You're the Jacksonville Jaguars. You need to put him a little bit on both sides of the ball and see where exactly his skills can match others and exceed others here at the NFL level.
Well, I would expect that they will start him off on one side of the ball or the other and then sort of work him into the other side. It just kind of depends where they want to go with that. I think defense makes the most sense for him. You have very few guys that are as talented one-on-one as DBs as he is. So I would see them do that and then sort of work him into the offense, not as a gadget guy or anything like that, but just situationally when they think he's ready to do that. But, we could be wrong. Maybe they see him wide receiver and use him as a 5th corner or something. I don't think you would do that. That sounds silly to me, but who knows?
We will see. Now, 2 first-round picks remain unsigned in the NFL right now. They are Jody Barron for the Broncos, the cornerback, and Shamar Stewart, the defensive end for the Bengals. And, of course, the Bengals, what a position they're in with their
just a mess
ends.
as usual there in Cincinnati with contracts and stuff. You know, whether you're T. Higgins or Jamar Chase or Trey Hendrickson, or you're just the new guy, the first-round pick. He had some problems with the injury exception waiver, I think, in like minicamp and didn't even participate in OTAs. And then something about an injury exemption or something in they wanted to change the boilerplate rookie contract language for him. And again, it's boilerplate language that all contracts have. They wanted to change that. And then, of course, he doesn't want to do that. And I don't think you could blame him for that because then that sets a dangerous precedent for future rookies. Just like the league isn't thrilled with some of these 2nd-round picks getting the fully guaranteed contracts. These guys don't want to give up anything as first rounds that may affect negotiations for other guys down the road.
I'm very much pro player when it comes to this back and forth between player and management for the contract, and just seems like the Bengals have had problems over and over again over years,
Yes.
like with signing their guys. So when that happens, like that lets you know that it's not just one guy, that's been a trouble guy. That's an organization that works differently.
Right.
And I don't want to completely heap on them, because I don't know the exact ins and outs of what they're trying to do. So I'm not going to do that. But I think that we can fairly say that this is an organization that deals with contracts differently than other teams in the NFL do. And it has led to disagreements with some star players in the past.
Yeah, and the problem is they've all gotten messy. They've all gotten out in the public, and all good players here as well. Players that if you're the fan, you want your team to keep.
Totally.
And if you're looking at it from the outside, you're like, why don't you want this guy? And it's hard to figure from the outside looking in, I suppose.
So maybe the Bengals on week 1, they have Shamar Stewart on one side and Trey Hendrickson on the other of their defensive
Very
line.
Possible.
But who knows at this point? So if that's the case, that'll be a really intriguing defensive line to watch. Shamar Stewart, one of our Raz guys, who was a 9.99 or a 9.98 or maybe a 10 on the. I forget what he was, but his Raz number, his relative athletic score, was a massive number coming out of Texas A&M. A guy who didn't produce that much at Texas A&M in terms of sacks, but is the guy who has numbers that are off the chart when it comes to testing, which I think Colts fans can attest to. Seeing guys once or twice, guys that have those big numbers that you're trying to coach into gold. You're trying to take that pan and just sift out all the gunk and leave all the great stuff to enjoy over the years. That doesn't always work that way. But we'll see what happens with Stewart there in Cincinnati. Now, Matt, you touched on this just a bit ago, but we'll get into depth a little bit more with it. The NFL has ruled in a collusion arbitration hearing. I don't want to spend too much time in the weeds on this, but the basics are the NFL and the NFLPA were in the center of a grievance that the NFLPA alleged there was collusion among the teams and the owners in the league. That was a response to the $230 million guaranteed contract that Deshaun Watson signed with the Browns.
A contract everybody agrees was a ridiculous contract.
Exactly. I mean, look at it in hindsight. Hindsight gives us a wonderful glimpse at that it was not a good idea. That anyway, the allegation was that NFL teams were kind of colluding in order to keep more guaranteed contracts like that to come out.
Basically, the NFL leadership convened and they said, hey, look how much guaranteed money this is. And if we continue to do these types of things, your salary cap implications, it's going to be really, really bad. So maybe you shouldn't do that. That's kind of the allegation. Well, that's not an allegation.
That's kind of what did happen. Right. So, but the I guess the accusation from the NFLPA was that it crossed the line to legal collusion, which requires certain steps for it to take.
Standards.
Like it's like you say something is slander or defamation in our world. Now there are certain steps that you have to take to prove that is exactly what happened. Same thing here with collusion. There are steps that need to be proven, and those steps just couldn't be proven in a court of law. The arbiter, or at least by an arbiter, it wasn't really a court of law. It was an arbiter that was in the situation, arbitration hearing. But they found the NFL encouraged teams, like you said, to reduce guarantees in veteran contracts. And the NFLPA was kind of saying the directive affected players like Lamar Jackson, Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, who had signed contracts
get as much guaranteed money as they had wanted to. Couldn't get fully guaranteed.
Exactly. Contracts. So the NFL won the grievance is what we're getting at, because the arbitrator said that teams did not join in such a collusive agreement and weren't working together.
So they're basically saying that independently, these 3 quarterback situations, the teams made the determination that the Ravens didn't talk to the Cardinals and say, don't do this with Murray.
And we won't do it with...
Right, and we won't do it with Lamar.
Right.
Of course, Lamar was, if I recall correctly, he was offered a couple of different times, like a 3-year fully guaranteed contract. He's his own agent, but he wanted a little bit longer-term contract, and they would not guarantee a longer-term contract.
Right.
And that's why, nobody put in an offer sheet for him. We talked about that on the podcast a couple of years ago when that was a thing. And it was kind of weird, like, why doesn't anyone want this really good quarterback? And so that was kind of, I'm saying it's not the centerpiece of the NFLPA case, but it's certainly part of it.
Yeah. The guaranteed contracts are always a sticking point or a discussion point in the NFL
Right.
because Matt, as you know, there are other leagues that do offer guaranteed
Baseball,
contracts.
basketball,
Yes,
fully
very
guaranteed.
much so. So, and so I mean, for the Pacers for right now, like they're in a bind because you get fully guaranteed contract to Tyrese Halliburton, and he's not going to play for the entirety of next season right now. So that's bad for the franchise that they have.
I thought we'd agreed not to talk about that.
Sorry about that. Tens of millions of dollars in their salary cap locked up with one guy who's not going to play a single play next year. So the NFL has never approved fully guaranteed contracts because of the greater risk of injury.
Because these guys are hitting each other every
that they
play.
give. Yes, as we've said before, NFL, the football is not a contact sport. It is a collision sport. And as Chap likes to say frequently, especially for guys down in the trenches, they're going through 20 car wrecks on a Sunday afternoon, like or the equivalent of that, as they bang into each other over and over and over again. And their bodies have to deal with that type of trauma, for lack of a better word. And they have to get better in 7 days, or else somebody else is going to take their job, So I understand the NFL's point of not wanting guaranteed contracts. I certainly understand players' point of wanting guaranteed contracts because they're the one putting their bodies on the line.
100%.
And these are always things that come up in CBA discussions, collective bargaining agreement discussions every 10 years or so whenever the NFL CBA expires between the Players Association and the league. So, I mean, if you really want guaranteed contracts, you got to give elsewhere. That's what it is. It's a give and take in those in those discussions. So, I think NFL teams looked at, they looked at what Deshaun Watson got, and they're like, don't sign me up for that, and as much as the Ravens were, as you said, kind of ready to offer Lamar Jackson something special because he's a special player. Right. For this to become the norm, it would take a lot of giveaway from NFL players, like increasing the number of games they play every year, increasing probably the revenue share to the owners from the players to sort of mitigate their risk in that factor, which I don't think any player wants to give back any percentage of the profits the NFL makes. So this is part of the business behind the league. And so I don't want to get too much into this. We've talked for 15 minutes already about all this stuff across the NFL. People want to know about the Colts. So that's what we're going to now. I don't think we need to go into there anymore. The Indianapolis Colts are going to hold 13 practices open to the public as training camp returns to Westfield's Grand Park Sports Campus. The very first day of camp, Wednesday, July 23rd. So put that on their calendar now, 10 a.m., free admission out there. For the first time, you get to watch the Colts in person this year. That is the camp kickoff day. They have special days of Family Day, Back Together Saturday, Thirsty Thursday, presented by Bud Light, Salute to Service Day, Give Back Sunday, Kicking the Stigma Day, all these special days out there. There's some days that are free admission, Matt. Other days have a $5 fee that are more the afternoon, evening practices and the joint practices that are scheduled, or a $10 fee for the joint practice on Thursday, August 14th specifically. But you could head online to our website, fox59.com, and go through all those details if you want to sign or want to look for specific dates. But this is an exciting time for Colts fans. They get to kind of plan out their late July, early August, get the chance to see the Colts in person. It's a wonderful opportunity for families and kids to go out there and see the Colts in person without spending like $70 probably minimum on a ticket, parking downtown, concessions, all that stuff. Like, you go out there and park at Westfield and you go out and you watch the Colts practice for an
parking
hour.
is a little bit extra, but it's pretty reasonable. It's $5 in advance, $10 if on day of. But it's a nice facility. It's a nice place to watch practice. And in addition to the practice, then you've also got like Colts City and the traveling Colts in Motion, all that stuff. So there's plenty of stuff for the family to do, and pretty affordable, even on the $5 days. And that's only for adults as well. We should say they're only going to charge ticket price for fans 18 and over. So if you got kids 17 and under, then they get in free, even if it's the joint practice with the Packers.
And that joint practice with the Packers, I'd imagine some Packers fans are going to be coming down to scope things out. That always happens because there's just fewer and fewer teams, hold these open practices, and you want to get the chance to see your team as much as possible. And Packers fans are in a lot of different places. They live down here.
Yeah, I'm sure that had nothing to do with that practice being $10 and the others being $5.
No, exactly. Proceeds, by the way, all go toward USA Football to support the development of flag football programs around Indiana. So this is not like the Colts gouging their fans. By the way, this is going to a good cause specifically. So I thought that was important to note as well, as we just briefly touch on that. I can't wait to be out there. I just hope that that Matt, it doesn't feel like it did this past week here in Indiana, where it's mid-90s and probably about 80% humidity, 90% humidity outside, and just baking you.
We have not enjoyed August and June.
No,
at all.
No.
Yeah, it's been a rough go, and we're in for it for a few more days, it sounds like.
We'll probably get a couple of them out there at Grand Park, but like I said, first day, Wednesday, July 23rd, 10 a.m. A lot of the practices are 10 a.m., and then there's some more that are 4 in the afternoon. The Packers practice is 3 in the afternoon. There's one that's an 8 p.m. Practice, the night practice out there on Thursday, July 31st, which is always exciting, which is also the Thirsty Thursday presented by Bud Light on July 31st. So if you can't wait for a nighttime to scope out the Colts out there, that's your date on the very last day in July. So looking forward to that. That's going to be fun. It always is. You hope for health. You hope for you want to see the guys out there. I mean, that's such an important thing in training camp is to put in the work and to not get busted by these nagging injuries, and it's important for the off season too, which for Anthony Richardson did not fully happen. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but to me, Matt, like the worst thing is just seeing guys on the sideline at training camp.
We don't want to hear soft tissue.
No,
don't want to hear that.
The nagging stuff.
Yeah, because that stuff just sticks around, it lingers, and it feels like you're never fully healed.
Right. Get them out there, keep them healthy, get ready for the season. There are those 13 practices open to the public, and then of course a couple preseason games before they kick off things for real in the 2025 season. And when the 2025 season opens, there are a large group of Colts that I wouldn't call all of them make or break years, but they certainly have a lot to gain and a lot to lose, both of them. And that the swing can be dramatic between how well somebody performs, what that means for their future, or if they struggle, what that means for their future. And there are good players that fall on both sides of that coin. I'll point to, like, an example is Jerry Hughes from years ago. Like, did not perform well here in Indianapolis and had to make it elsewhere. Credit to him, he busted his butt, put in the work, and became dominant elsewhere. So when we go through this list of saying most to gain, most to lose, like Jerry Hughes could have been a guy on this list at one time, and he lost. But then he turned it around eventually somewhere else. So I'm saying I guess most to gain and most to lose for their future with the Indianapolis Colts, I think is a good way to describe.
Or from a financial standpoint.
Yes, for sure. To describe an immediate financial standpoint, specifically this segment. So we're both going to go through a little bit of a list here. We have about 10 guys that we're going to discuss, and I'm going to start off with Daniel Jones because I think that this is a massive opportunity for Daniel Jones to showcase his talents in a way that he did not get the opportunity to do, Matt, when he was in New York. Because when he's here, I don't think the Colts have the best wide receiver core in the NFL, and I think I've made that perfectly clear in the past here on this podcast. But they have a better wide receiver core than he has ever had in New York.
Yes.
They have Jonathan Taylor, who is better as a running back than maybe everybody except, or on the same level as Saquon Barkley. We'll put it that way. But anybody who he played with last year,
not named
before, exactly. Anybody not named Saquon Barkley. I knew where I was going there. I promise. I wasn't going to say he's better than Saquon Barkley. Obviously, that is not true. He is at very least right there. You can make an argument for one or the other depending on your flavor. But Daniel Jones, if history tells us anything, even if Matt Anthony Richardson is fully healthy in Game 1. He has never made it through a season. He has always had nicks and knacks and bruises that have kept him out of the game. So I have to think that even if Anthony Richardson is the start of Day 1, Daniel Jones will start 1 or 2 or 3 games for the Indianapolis Colts this year. And during that time, he has a limited opportunity, if that's the case, to show the NFL that he deserves to be a number 1 quarterback in the league in the future.
Yeah, I mean, if we were sponsored by FanDuel Sports, which we're not, I would bet heavily on Daniel Jones starting at least maybe like 4 games.
Yeah, I don't think that's ridiculous at all.
you know, and like you said, maybe
he starts game one. That would be something else entirely.
Right.
But
he may win the quarterback battle there, or, you know, maybe it sounds like Richardson's shoulder thing is under control now, but we won't know until we get to training camp. And then there's always the chance of something happening in a preseason game or having some sort of flare up or something like that. So I think you're right. I mean, if we see Anthony Richardson in all the Colts games this year, I will be very, very surprised. Just because of the injury history that we've seen. And so for Daniel Jones, that's an opportunity because, well, maybe you are the week one starter. Maybe you win the job, or maybe by week 4, Richardson's banged up and you got to start. You can show the league, you know, what you can do. And, you know, maybe that's his only start of the year. Maybe gets a couple more starts. And that could end up the team that needs a quarterback in the offseason, because there's always going to be a team that needs a quarterback in the offseason. Maybe he plays himself into a nice deal. Not that he already doesn't have a pretty nice contract as ostensibly a backup quarterback with the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah, you can platoon a couple good games as a quarterback into a really nice contract.
Just ask Rob Johnson.
Yeah, exactly. We've seen it over the years. Rob Johnson's a great example. Like, I grew up in Philly, famously, as everyone knows who listens to this podcast. So I saw guys like Kevin Cobb, playing for the Eagles, then get a great contract with the Arizona Cardinals. I saw a guy like Nick Foles obviously did that to get contracts with Kansas City, Jacksonville Jaguars as well. And there's some other player. AJ Feely was the one I was thinking of, the other one with the got contract with the Miami Dolphins after he filled in for a couple games. So I've seen it over and over again throughout my life as a fan of the NFL, and it happens recently too, that guys perform well in limited capacity and then get an opportunity to do something better, you know, and that's obviously what Daniel Jones wants to do, whether it's here in Indianapolis or it's elsewhere. He wants to be a number one quarterback in the NFL. And he came to Indianapolis with the specific idea, Matt, that he would have the opportunity to show that, because Anthony Richardson has been hurt over the past couple of years, thinking he would get the opportunity to, at the very least, fill in, if not start from game one. So I think that there's a lot to gain for Daniel Jones. There's not a ton to lose for him. But the swing is just so massive in direction of what he can gain. Because if you're a number one quarterback or competing to be a number one quarterback in the NFL, you typically make like in the tens of millions of dollars, not just in the $4 to $5 million, or I think what is he making this year?
It's like 12 or 13, I think.
Yeah.
Or
so
maybe 14.
Exactly. So, but if you're a career backup, you're making probably in the single-digit $1 million, and then not that that's nothing. It's only $5 million. It's not that much, but if you're making like $15 million, or if you're making $20 million, and then if you prove yourself in the long run, you're making $40-50 million contracts. That is entirely different than just being kind of that career backup guy.
And maybe a little patience with somebody's career. I mean, you look at what Sam Darnold did last season, and then he was able to play that into a nice contract. That's probably somebody that Daniel Jones is looking at a little bit here. If this career can kind of go along this same particular path, maybe I can find a home with somebody else and work my way into a big contract.
Do you want me to go through my full list, Matt?
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll go through this full list, and then you can get into guys that you want to talk about. The next one on my list is Jalen Carlies. This is only his second season in the NFL, and he's transitioning from safety to linebacker, as he played safety at Missouri. The Colts drafted him to be a linebacker, but right now, based on what the Colts did in the draft and what the Colts did in free agency, or didn't do in both of those cases, Jalen Carlies is your starting linebacker alongside Zaire Franklin right now. So the Colts expect him to be out there a lot. Like, if you remember last year, it was Franklin and EJ Speed. They were out there all the time. And I know there's been talk this year about Lou Anarumo, the new defensive coordinator, throwing in some more dime packages on defense. Like, you might have Jalen Carlies as your dime linebacker because he is more in tune, he is a better suited to be a pass defender, is what I'm trying to say, than Zaire Franklin is himself. So he has the opportunity to be out there on the field a lot. And if he has indeed developed into a solid linebacker, which we don't know right now because we haven't seen him this offseason, much like Zaire, they've both been kind of coming back from
shoulder surgery,
from injuries. There's big room for him to grow, but at the same time, I think there is some room like for him to lose too, maybe a little bit more than Daniel Jones, just kind of using that as an example, because like you're early on in your career. You can only struggle so many times before coaches and fan base just lose their interest
Right.
in you. And if you're given this opportunity and you allow the entire fan base to say, I knew they should have taken someone in the draft. I knew they should have signed a veteran free agent linebacker, because that's kind of been some of our questions throughout this offseason. Will they take a linebacker in the draft? Will they sign someone in free agency? The talk, the cloud becomes heavier if you struggle. So I think Carlisle has a great opportunity to establish himself as a starting linebacker, because he's going to be given that opportunity, it appears like, Matt. But at the same time, there's some room for him, for his career to kind of get derailed here if he doesn't live up to expectations here in his second year in the league.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good way to put that with Carlisle. He unfortunately was sidetracked last year with injuries as well, so we don't really know as much about him as we could if he had been healthy and able to play a little bit more. And then obviously entering this offseason, now we've got a shoulder surgery going into this year, and then a complete change in defensive philosophy. And we don't know, obviously they've kept him on the roster. They drafted him, but they drafted him when Gus Bradley was the defensive coordinator. So we'll have to see how Lou Anarumo's defensive philosophy, if it suits his skill set or not.
And the thing is, like, nobody on this Colts team knows whether it does or not, because he hasn't been out there.
Nope.
And I don't care what Chris Ballard tells us when we gather in Westfield, because he always talks with us right before training camp. And I'm sure people are going to ask about linebacker, because it is an obvious position to ask about right now. We're going to say, Chris, are you happy with your linebacker core? And he'll say, yeah, we like our guys. And we like Jalen. We think he has a great opportunity. And he certainly, like, they can make some determinations about his skills from last year. But like you said, Matt, this is a completely different scheme. He has to do different things. He's going to be asked to use different skills on a play-to-play basis than he would have been in a Gus Bradley type system. So until he is on the field, the Colts don't know. They can be optimistic, but they don't know right now what they have in Jalen Carlisle. So that's what makes this a lot to gain, a lot to lose player. And if he comes out there, I'm not saying he's not going to be, but I'm saying that we do not know.
Yeah, there's just too many unknowns.
Yes.
with Mr. Carlisle.
And you just want as few unknowns as possible if you're like a coach or a fan. Like, you want to know for sure, like, we're fine with this guy out there. He might struggle, he might have a few bumps and bruises, but we know that he's going to be solid for most of the season, and we think we can win with this guy. And with Jalen Carlisle, I don't know, and nobody else knows if they can win with him right now.
We talk about PFF and whether it's just another tool to use, but in limited action, he had a pretty good PFF evaluation. The problem is, just don't have the snap count that you really would like to have for a body of work.
One player who got a little bit more of a snap count last year, gave us a little bit more of an idea about who he is Nick Cross at safety. Another guy who we thought going into last year that the Colts might provide some more veteran backup to put. Nope, didn't happen. And they played Nick for the majority of the season. He was not bad, I don't think, and he was fairly good. And there's a reason that Chris Ballard traded up to pick him in the third round a couple years ago. But the main reason I have Nick on my list here is that this is a big to gain, big to lose season. This is the last year of his rookie deal, Matt. This is his fourth season in the NFL. He started all of last year. He's going to be a starter all this year. So if he establishes himself as a starter, then that either locks you in here for getting a deal here with the Colts or somewhere else. We've seen Julian Blackmon that he's not signed anywhere yet from what I
have. Yeah, he had a couple of visits.
Like I keep looking from time to time. I didn't look this week. I forgot, but I don't think. Yeah.
No, if he has apologies, we overlooked it
recently. Somehow. But Nick Cross, if you're a starting safety, then you're going to get a contract. Julian Blackmon, the NFL has kind of spoken. They don't think that he's a starter, or they don't want to pay him the money to be a starter, or Julian is holding out to have a starter role for sure and not a competitive role. I can't speak to exactly what his plans are right now. But with Nick Cross going into the last year of your contract and being a starter, and an unquestioned starter right now in the secondary, Matt. There's a lot that he can gain in terms of his future in the NFL, and there's a lot that he can lose. So there's a big swing about what happens with Nick Cross based on what he's able to accomplish this season.
Yeah, and it's just been this up and down story with Nick Cross, really, because he started out and they're like, oh, we're going to play this guy, and then he didn't see the field very much, and then we're going to use him here, and then they didn't use him that way, and then last year, they kind of bounced around Julian Blackmon. It's kind of funny how their fates are kind of intertwined a little bit, but they kind of bounced around what they're going to do with Julian Blackmon, and then they did find a role for Nick Cross, and for the most part, I mean, I think he played a pretty decent season for him last year. So, will he stick with the team or not? And I guess he's not with the team anymore, Julian Blackmon, but it goes to show he had trouble getting onto another team last offseason, and then this offseason is the same thing, just mostly with injuries and banged up and stuff. But we are talking about Nick Cross, so I should probably focus on Nick Cross. But it's a big year for him.
Yep. Perhaps my next two are guys that could see just massive paydays if they succeed this season. The number one is Bernhard Raimann. Like I think that he's already established that he's going to get a contract from the Colts next year, because left tackles don't fall out of trees. Once you get them, like you want to hold on to them, man. And he's already earned, I think, a good contract based on what we've seen from him so far. Even if he were to, knock on wood, get injured right now and miss the entire season, I hesitate to say that, but he would still get a deal here in Indianapolis, maybe along the lines that Will Fries got after his injury last year with the Minnesota Vikings. But if Bernhard Raimann continues his uptick and continues to have the seasons that he has put in the past couple years here in his fourth year in the NFL, another year as a starter at left tackle, he is going to earn a contract that is north of $20 million a year, because that's what NFL left tackles get. And he has been a very good left tackle, Matt. Make no mistake. When he is out there and he is healthy, he is a very good player. I don't know if he's on the level of Anthony Costanzo at his peak yet, but Costanzo is also a 10-year veteran in the NFL and had a couple years there later in his career where he was exceptional, where he kind of had his best years once he got fully established in the league. And Raimann, here in year 4, has established himself as a starter in the NFL and can continue to take steps forward and continue to learn under Tony Sparano and take a vault into being one of the better left tackles in the NFL. If he gets a Pro Bowl nod this year, then I don't know what he's going to make next year in the future, but it's going to be a number that the Colts are going to have to pay, because like I said, if you get a left tackle, you're not going to let him walk.
And this is a guy who was a third-round pick, and he was kind of a raw guy who he grew up in
Central Michigan.
Central Michigan. Didn't necessarily, start off with a football in his hand, sort of thing. So they knew he was going to be a developmental guy. His rookie season, they had to throw him to the dogs. They had some injuries, and so he had that miserable game in front of everybody, in front of the nation in that Denver ball game.
To be fair, that was a miserable game for everybody.
Miserable game
even
for
people
everybody,
who watched.
not just for Bernhard Raimann,
Yes.
but he learned from that experience, and that rawness that he had. They have managed to develop that into a very solid bookend there on the left side of the offensive line. So, and we do know that, especially Chris Ballard, assuming that he retains his general managership here with the Colts after the season, depending upon how things shake out and all that. But we do know that he does like to keep guys that they have developed. And he likes to reward guys that, they've invested in. They've invested in Raimann. They've developed him. And you would hate to see that just go away to some other team for, $20 or $25 million.
Yep, for sure. And I don't think that's going to happen. I really don't. And it wouldn't surprise me to see the Colts extend Raimann right now. They would love to, I think. I think Raimann wouldn't mind as much playing another year to see what he gets. But I also think that it would be good for him to sign an extension right now, because I think it would be a hefty extension right now, because the Colts have a lot of faith in him.
If you don't, I mean, because we talked after Costanzo, life after Costanzo has not been great for the Colts at left tackle.
It wasn't.
But I think, especially in the immediate aftermath of it, they messed around. They Matt Pryor. We had the Eric Fisher thing. We tried getting him off of an Achilles injury, and I think they landed it with Raimann. So they got to keep him in the fold.
Okay, my last one is Kwity Paye as guys with a lot to gain and a lot to lose. Kwity is in the last year of his rookie deal. The Colts picked up the 5th-year option for him as a first-round pick. So this is his fifth year in the NFL. he's proven that, like, we've compared him before on this podcast, Matt, along with Chap, to being at minimum a Jabal Sheard, which is a really freaking good NFL player.
It's not a knock.
No, has had a really good, successful career. Jabal Sheard has as an edge defender who can pressure the quarterback at times, but is also very solid on the edge and is a very good run stopper. And teams want this 100%. What Kwity Paye can do, and what any real defensive end can do, is have one season where you get 12 sacks, and then all of a sudden your number just shoots up. And Kwity has had a couple of really good seasons. He's had 8+ before in the NFL sacks. But once you start getting double digits, man, that's something that's different. Once you hit that number, and if you get into the teens, then your number shoots up again. Like I said, so. If this is the chance for Kwity Paye to stay healthy, which he hasn't always in the past, he's had a couple of injuries here or there that he's missed a couple games. But if he is able to get to the quarterback more often this year in particular, there's a ton for him to gain. I think he's already established a baseline, so I don't think there's a lot for him to lose in the NFL this year. Like, he's still going to get a contract next year somewhere because he's proven that he's a really good edge defender, like we said, like a Jabal Sheard type of player that will be in the NFL for a good amount of time. But if he can take the next step as a pass rusher and take advantage of the opportunity that he's going to have as a starter on the defensive line this year, then the contract that he earns next year could be a very big one. I mean, we saw Dio Odangbo get a big contract from the Bears, and Kwitty's could certainly be bigger than Dio's because I think he has done more than Dio has.
I was going to say, I think Dio's been a good player for the Colts, but Kwity has been just, for the most part, just a very consistent guy, flashed some playmaking abilities, and then he's just so solid against the run. He does everything that you would want an edge guy to do.
Yep, for sure. So a lot for Kwity Paye to gain this year. Matt, you have a couple players that you wanted to bring up too, and then we'll get to our consensus number one player with the most to gain to lose in this season.
Yeah, I went with another edge guy for the Colts, and it may kind of determine how things go for them with the pass rush, and that's Samson Ebukam, coming off an Achilles injury, which is a word I do not want to have to say based on what happened with the Pacers lately. Just hate Achilles injuries. But he's coming off that injury. Happened in training camp last year, so he's about a year out from it. We know the recovery period for that is usually 10 to 12 months, and that's just to be able to kind of get your range of motion back, and then after that, does that explosion come back? So if Samson comes back and he's able to be an edge rusher for the Colts and be effective, that'll be very, very good for him and for the team. If not, unfortunately, maybe you have a Dallas Flowers situation who came back from the same type of injury, did not have his explosive, different position, of course, but then they just kind of had to part ways with him. So that's going to be big for Ebukam. It's not really fair to him because we're talking about a guy who's coming off an injury.
Yeah, I'm not positive that Ebukam's future is here in Indianapolis, and that's not a knock on him. I think his first year, he was very good here. He delivered more than expected. He had a career year, and then he got injured in the preseason last year or in training camp last year. So, like, with the Colts, what they have, like, if it's Kwity Paye, I think they want to keep Kwity Paye if they can.
They've down got to two of them.
Laiatu Latu, who they drafted in the first round. They got JT Tuimoloau, who they drafted in the second round this year. Like, they have a lot of defensive ends that I think they like a good amount. So, like, if you put Samson Ebukam somewhere on that list about guys who are in the Colts' long-term plans, right now he might be at the bottom of that. But I try not to be disrespectful when I'm saying that because I think he's a good player. But like you said, if he has a good year this year, that could platoon into a really fine free agent contract.
And I think that's what the expectation is probably going to be for him. And so he's just got to hope that he gets some of that quick twitch back, which is all the game when it comes to Achilles injuries, as we've talked about a lot on this podcast. Another guy I picked is Juju Brents. And we talked a little bit last week about strengths and weaknesses of the Colts, and that corner could be a particular strength of this year's team with getting Mooney Ward. And if you have a healthy Juju Brents and you've got Jalen Jones there as well, and of course you've got Kenny Moore, but they're all kind of different and do a few different things. But Brents is a guy that has sort of become the defensive version of Anthony Richardson, in that he has flashed some incredible athleticism, some wonderful playmaking ability. The problem is we just cannot keep him. The Colts just cannot keep him on the field. And so I think this is a big year for Brents because much like another player that we will talk about a little bit later, staying on the field being productive and being reliable is the whole game here with Juju.
There are a few players that I root for more, and I try not to be a fan of players that I cover too much because it's just not what I'm supposed to do. But Juju, being like, he's a local kid. He's from Warren Central. He grew up. Bob Sanders was his favorite player. Like, there's no one that Colts fans should be rooting for more than this guy, because he loves the Colts. He wants to be here. He wants this franchise to succeed, and he wants to succeed himself, obviously. So I am rooting for Juju to get it together this year and to stay on the field and to give himself an opportunity to show what he can do. Like, at the very least, like, get that opportunity, man. This is only his third year in the league. Right. So he has one more right now, Matt, before his rookie contract is done. So, like, he still has a little bit of opportunity in front of him. But like I said earlier, with when it comes to Jalen Carlies, you only get so many opportunities. And if you get toward the end of that rookie deal and it's just not panning out, other people are going to be drafted. Like, the Colts drafted Justin Wally this year, and they are very high on Justin Wally, so they say. So Juju he has to feel the fire right now, because if it's not now, it might be never for him. With how the Colts are approaching that position, signing Ward, they like Jalen Jones, obviously, drafting Justin Wally. The opportunities, if he doesn't take advantage of them this year, are going to go elsewhere in the future.
And it is funny, but if big if, capital I, capital F, Juju, if he can stay healthy this year, it is a super solid, not spectacular, but a super solid cornerback group there for the Colts. So I hope that, like you said, for the local kid, hope he can make good. Another guy, now this is a second-year player, so he's not really worried about the contract really or anything like that, but A.D. Mitchell. Just, again, tantalizing athleticism. Did not have a problem staying on the field last year. That wasn't the problem with Mitchell. He was on the field. It was just being a reliable playmaker for the Colts. And this is a guy that you could move around, do all kinds of different stuff. You could send him deep. You could put him over the middle. He can beat guys one-on-one. We've seen it. The problem is just cannot finish the play on too many occasions. And I know that Reggie Wayne is high on him, and I know that he can have a big role in this offense, but he's got to be able to show that there's a reason to put him out there.
And with what the Colts have right now, and Michael Pittman, who they love, and Josh Downs, who is an up-and-coming young player himself, Alec Pierce, who's trying to take the next step in his career and be more than just a deep threat. Like, the opportunities for A.D. Mitchell are going to be fewer and further between, and they draft Tyler Warren.
Right.
And if what we saw in the offseason is any indication, Tyler Warren's going to get the ball. Right, and he's going to get a good amount of opportunities to make plays this year. So A.D. Mitchell, he can make plays. Like, it's obvious that he has the physical ability to do it. He's going to have to do it in the few opportunities that he gets in order to earn more, because there are a lot of people who want that ball. There are a lot of people who have earned the opportunity to get that ball. And A.D. Mitchell has specifically not earned the opportunity for the ball to be thrown his way as much as other people have. So if that becomes a trend, then, like I said with Juju Brents just a minute ago, the Colts start looking elsewhere. They draft someone else. They bring in a free agent to take that position instead. So yeah, might still be 3 years left on A.D. Mitchell's rookie contract, but there's no time like the present to remind them why they drafted you in the first place.
Yeah, just the speed, his ability to break off and get away from guys, and physicality as well, which is not something that a lot of the Colts' other receivers possess. This guy does have that one-on-one ability to just break a guy. And we've got to see him continue to develop that a little bit more. The other guy that I have, and I think we know what we're going to get from Alec Pierce for the Colts. He's established kind of what game he's going to play here for Indianapolis, trying to work on some of those other things, some shorter routes, and being able to, get away from guys one-on-one a little bit more underneath, so that you can get him some catch and run opportunities, because those would be good for him too. We know he can go up high, but the reason I say gain or lose for Alec Pierce, because if he plays a solid season this year, huge contract.
Yes.
And even if he has kind of I won't say mediocre, but an above average, but not like fantastic season, still probably playing himself into a big contract. It is probably a question for him. The production is going to determine how big of a contract it's going to be, and whether the Colts are going to have to maybe use a franchise tag on him, or if he's going to hit the open market and make a lot of money.
For sure. And the franchise tag cannot be out of the picture for Alec Pierce right now, because I know the Colts love him, and they want to see him, like he does, take the next step and be more than just a deep threat player. But last year he established what we have all known he can do.
Right.
because he had, like, we have said whatever we want about Anthony Richardson about needing to be more consistent. He can chuck it deep now.
Yep, throw it down.
And Alec Pierce can run deep now. And he can get under the ball. He can jump up and out jump players for the ball. And those skills, some of them are God-given. Some of them are he works on incredibly hard. But and that combination of physical talent and skill is something that is very rare for players. And you need to be able to stretch the field in today's NFL. Shane Steichen has said it time and time again, like, chunk plays are so important for the offense. And you want to be exciting. You want to be good and consistent, of course, too.
Right.
And I think we learned that with Anthony Richardson, that needs to happen. And Alec Pierce is trying to kind of establish that part of his game in a way too, not just be exciting, but be good on a play-to-play basis and be a receiver that can be counted on in more than just those special circumstances.
And there were a handful of plays last year where it wasn't just throw the ball deep down to Alec and let him go up and get it. And he needs a little bit more. I think he wants a little bit more of those types of plays just to kind of show, hey, I'm a well-rounded receiver, not just a one-trick pony.
Mm-hmm. You are watching the Colts Blue Zone Podcast on Fox 59. And that brings us to our number one undisputed consensus.
It's not even a question.
Most to gain, most to lose in 2025. The young man, Anthony Richardson. As we have discussed, Matt, all throughout this offseason, all throughout last season, and pretty much ever since Richardson has been drafted, the young man is the ultimate boomer bust prospect. And the Colts, Chris Ballard, put faith in his coaching staff when they drafted a guy with complete raw tools that had shown little in terms of some development, but not crazy development. Maybe I shouldn't say little. That might be a little unfair.
Just not a lot of polish.
No exactly. Polish. Yeah, I think that's better. It's shown little polish in his college tape, thinking that Shane Steichen and the coaches here could pull something else out of him. Has it happened yet? Not entirely that we have seen. And they still say they believe in Anthony Richardson. They are still definitely going to give him the opportunity, every opportunity, to win the starting job because, as we've said on this podcast, they want him to win the starting job. They want him to be successful because that means a lot for their careers, for Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen. So they're going to do everything they can to make that happen, to make him the Colts starting quarterback. But it barely needs discussion, but we do it anyway, that Richardson is the one player on the Colts with the most to gain and the most to lose this year, but on both spectrums, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, because you're talking about they don't have to exercise it this year, but you're talking about the fifth-year option. You talk about quarterback contract extension, whether you're going to stick with this franchise or whether you're going to end up being kind of a cast-off that, is going to have to go somewhere else and play for somebody else and try to prove yourself there. It's kind of a scary situation, I think, if you're Anthony Richardson, because, they've got Daniel Jones and they didn't just get a token guy who's going to take some snaps. This is a guy who was a first-round pick, who started games, who led a team to the playoffs, in 1 year. And yeah, his career hadn't been, all that great in the last couple of years with the Giants, but this is a formidable challenge for Richardson. He's got to show that competitive edge and that competitive spirit to try to stave off, a really competitive guy at number 2.
Yeah, and I think we'll close out with just finishing up here about Anthony Richardson, Matt. You say that he spoke with Zach Goodall of 247 Sports, saying that he's going to be ready for training camp. The key quote is, quote, "I'm all good. Not really even a bump in the road," talking about his injury. "I feel like I tripped, I fell, just got back up and hit the ground running again." So that's an encouraging way to talk about it. I still think it is discouraging for your number one quarterback to miss any time in the offseason due to aggravating an injury from the past.
Especially one that we thought was fixed. Like, the team had convinced us that they knew this thing was a thing, so we're just going to go and we're going to fix it. Yeah, it's going to cost them the season, but it'll be fine after that. Well, here we go. It's the same AC joint.
Right. Not 100% fine, apparently, as he aggravated that surgically repaired AC joint in his right shoulder that he injured his rookie season. But Richardson is Pro Football Focus's obvious pick for the Colts make or break player of 2025. And so like everyone who is listening to this podcast who maybe clicked on a link, or if you're on Fox 59 now or on YouTube, who saw the screen at the beginning that says whatever it says, that Matt will make a decision to put on that in a minute. But
it's a smorgasbord of players.
Exactly. Like you knew that this was coming at number one of who is going to be the biggest make or break player for the Colts. And when off season, when websites rank all NFL starting quarterbacks and they put you in the lowest tier of starting quarterbacks, that lets you know that expectations are pretty low. When you are alongside Tyler Shuck, the draft pick out of Louisville, you know that your expectations are not what you want them to be nationally. You want to be a guy that people see as Aaron Rodgers in his prime, as like, can he lead this team to a Super Bowl, who we talked about earlier in this podcast. But Anthony Richardson has a lot of work to do before he gets to that level. And we'll settle with, as I kind of mentioned earlier, and this is something that I've talked about in this podcast, which I read in I believe it was an ESPN article one day, that Anthony Richardson needs to be less exciting and more good. Not that you need to be less exciting,
Right.
but he's been more exciting than good so far in his career. And
he's been big play, excitement,
yes,
explosive. We want consistent.
Which exciting is great. You want guys to be exciting. Josh Allen is exciting. Lamar Jackson is exciting. You need to be good along with that. One can't be at the expense of the other. So plenty more Colts over the coming weeks. We will kind of go through here what the Colts had to say before training camp begins too, from the past couple weeks of the offseason. But sure hope you enjoyed listening. You can watch us on YouTube, on the Fox 59 Now app as well, on Fire TV, Roku TV, and Apple TV as well. And get us delivered to your podcast listening device by subscribing wherever podcasts are downloadable. So for Matt, I'm Dave. Chap will be back in a little bit. We appreciate listening, and we'll see you next week on the Colts Blue Zone Podcast.